outside of the Alabama ecosystem. That's why when we welcome in our next guest, Chris, you ready, man? Give me a thumbs up. Ready to go? All right. We have Chris Marler. What's up, man? I appreciate you being here. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, man, I appreciate you having me.
All right, let's see. Let's take this echo off. I think we take this off and probably be a little bit better. Is that better? We good?
That's good.
All right, man. So, ladies and gentlemen, am I saying your last name right, Chris Marler?
Marler, yeah.
Marler. All right. Chris Marler out of Fourth and Wrong podcast, 104.5 ESPN in Baton Rouge. Everybody in the Undefeated. The Undefeated is the community inside the comment box. So if you can't think of something, I promise you they got you. They'll look it up, stats, jokes, whatever you want, man. So the point of this interview is to have a little bit of fun with it, right? Sometimes we get so wrapped up in kind of the ecosystem of Alabama football. It's good to kind of like step out of the Alabama arena and get some points of views for some other people outside. Yeah. So, again, Marler, part of Fourth and Wrong podcast and 105.5 in ESPN Baton Rouge. I love the evilness of the Mount Rushmore on college football. You know, I thought it was hilarious. And, of course, Coach Saban would be right up there and the first guy because, you know, he's what he did to college football. He gave everybody PTSD that was a non-Alabama football fan.
Yeah. And so, one, I want to clarify, and I understand the hat I'm wearing, but it's just a hat. I mean, I was born and raised an Alabama fan. I've been a Bama fan my whole life. I make no bones about that. I just try to. This shocks a lot of people. I piss off a lot of Bama fans, to be honest about this. I just try to objectively talk about college football and objectively talk about Alabama. And sometimes it roasts people the wrong way. But I think, dude, we did the what do you call it? Villains of Mount Rushmore of college football villains, and it was funny because I posted that graphic. And Kristen Saban, she reached out and she's like, "What the hell is this?" And I was like, "Listen, I love your dad. He has contributed to like a majority of my emotional well-being over the last two decades. But also, he has ruined like people, like outside fan bases. Like, there's a reason why people hate Bama so much. So I feel like he had to be on there. I would like honestly, we posted like 3 of those from the pod. And maybe I'm just being biased, but I thought my 3 were spot on, man. Saban, Jameis Winston, Cam, and the NCAA. Like, because if you remember, like, I don't think I've ever been more consumed with irrational, unhealthy, unbridled hate for one person in my life than that 2010 season. And that's not something I'm like super proud of as an adult, but I just was like, I was so invested into watching Auburn lose that season. Maybe even more so than watching Bama, but that's what we had to have him on the list.
We were talking, so then it kind of, our conversation with the Undefeated kind of morphed into like, who are the villains of like Alabama football? And we came up with kind of a list, a rough list, and Undefeated, you guys can drop those on in the comment box again. But we came up with several names. I think when you go to the first one and the biggest one, who's kind of like the king of all this would be Philip Fulmer, right, of Tennessee.
Oh my God.
He's like the godfather. And then under him, you have, you know, any coach who coached at Auburn and beat Nick Saban, right? So you have Malzahn. Hugh Freeze is automatically inserted there. Fans were also saying they were Cam Newton was one of them, clearly. Yeah.
Tuberville.
Tuberville, dang, that's a really good one. Thank you.
I mean, dude, I remember watching that guy hold up the 6 fingers, and it was just like, this sucks. Like this, dude, Fulmer. Like I'm old enough to remember, like, and there's a lot of Bama fans that did not have to suffer through this, but I distinctly remember Bama losing 7 straight games to Tennessee. Chris Davis is another one somebody just said in the comments. And dude, here's the thing. I bet Chris Davis is like the nicest dude. I bet Chris Davis, he's probably just like minding his business right now, having like an Egg McMuffin, just not having a care in the world. And it's like the moment that guy hits my phone screen, my television screen, I'm like, this MF, this is awful. Like this guy.
And then we also came up with like David Pollock, right? And what was right? And that was that was like a late edition that came out from like, and I'm surprised it wasn't more upfront about that when we went kind of to the past. But you know, in terms of like new villains, he's like a new character that entered the scene. Can you? I mean, and the crazy thing is, Coach Saban, you could maybe say like took his job.
So. I have a lot of feelings on David Pollock. He went to a high school in the same region as me growing up, and he's just always been an odd cat, man. I remember seeing him at media days a couple years ago, and like We talked for a second, and then I was like, "Oh, I went to Parkview," and he was like, he like straight up like walked away. He's like, "Well, then I hate you," and I was like, "We're adults, man. It was like 20 years ago." Like, I thought that everything he said was so blown out of proportion. But the only thing that was blown out of proportion more, because I think what he said was kind of true at the time. Georgia was, I mean, they were the preeminent team in college football at the time.
Mm-hmm.
But what was crazy was he says that on a panel with Saban, and Saban just sits there and is waiting for his turn to talk. Doesn't say the overreaction to like his body language and look what Saban said here. It was like, dude, what? And you just know all the while he was like, I'm gonna wait until it's my turn to talk. I'm new to this television thing. Also, when I see you guys again next December, we're gonna do what we always do, which is ruin you in the city of Atlanta. So.
Another one that I came up with was Hunter Renfrow. And let me share a quick story about Hunter Renfrow. So I go down to the Alabama versus Clemson, where that was a Sugar Bowl like many years ago, right? Yeah. And we had like, I don't know, there was some downtime for one of the media events after we have gone and done all this stuff. And I went to the World War II Museum, which, by the way, is one of my favorite things to do in New Orleans, right? You've been there. So I'm going around there, and this guy just walks around. He's like kind of balding. He looks young, and it's Hunter Renfrow, like with his dad, just like eating the bag of popcorn. This guy's like looks like the most average dude, but it's like he is, he was a thorn in the claw of Alabama.
Yeah. Well, he's a really good player. That one still hurts, man. That one is, to this day, like 2020 is the best Bama team I've ever seen.
Yeah.
2016 is the best Bama team I like outside of that one, which 2020 was like a super team and they rolled through everybody. That 2016 team, man, to this day, I cannot believe that they didn't go undefeated. That's like 92, 2009, all those teams. That was the greatest Bama team I've seen outside of 2020. You could honestly make the case that they might have been up there with 2020. That's, oh man, that one still stings.
I kind of want to segue into the next topic. It's kind of like, I know you're an Alabama fan, but now, contributing on 104.5 ESPN in Baton Rouge, kind of what's the outside take, from people that you talk to or, calling to your guys' show or who's on your show, Fourth and Wrong podcast, whatever it is, the outside take. What have you heard about the hiring of Coach Kalen DeBoer? Because it seems to me that people feel that Alabama is now vulnerable because Nick Saban is gone. And you look to the preseason SEC rankings from CBS, and it has Alabama way down at 5, even behind LSU and Brian Kelly.
I love it. I love it. I think this has been, because it's been happening for so long, and we'll get into like Bama as like a team, I'm sure, later on here, and I think that they're going to be a lot better than people think. But I think that regardless of what even happens in the field, most of the outside talk is not seen through. People always say, like, take off your crimson colored glasses or whatever. We talk to Bama fans. Like, I don't know what color the glasses are for outside fan bases, but it's definitely skewed. Because one of the things that people have really, really been waiting for a long time is this want for the dynasty to be over. And like maybe it is. It's weird how the level of success that other fan bases who have not seen that kind of success apparently are holding Bama to. You go to the playoff last year. You won the SEC 3 of the last 4 years, and we're talking about like the dynasty being dead. I think the outside perception is that they're not going to be nearly as good because Saban's gone. DeBoer is obviously a terrible hire because he's from somewhat close to the same region as that one guy Auburn hired a couple of years ago, so he can't be any good, even though he just coached in a national championship game 4 calendar months ago. I think the want. I think like the want and emotional, what's the word I'm looking for here? Like justifying is really what's setting like all of the tone for like the comments made about where Bama is. I hate to say that. I'm not trying to be biased like towards Bama about it, but that's honestly what I think. I think that this overwhelming want for it to be over is like superseded any kind of like majority of rational thought about it.
So this is the first time that we've had any type of interaction, okay? This is the first time we talked. Messaged you on Twitter yesterday. I was like, want to jump on the show, jump on the show. So I appreciate you being here. And I like the chemistry. Chemistry feels good. It's like the opening of, just a good interaction. So I appreciate you being here. Okay, so the outside world too. What I want to talk to you about this is thoughts on Jalen Milroe as the quarterback. Now, when you have what seems to be a better offense, the next guy is always better, right? This is the better scheme for him. This is the better, he has better continuity with Nick. And it does honestly seem like that. And when we talk here, it's like people don't like. Oh, how about this for a villain, Bill O'Brien? Is that a good? How did we miss that one? Shit,
Bill O'Brien, Bama had a top 10 scoring offense in 2 straight years with Bill O'Brien. But also, I remember distinctly what he did on like 2nd and goal from the 1 at A&M.
Yes.
I remember going back and charting this after that absolute misery in Knoxville. They ran like, I believe it was 5 different plays from inside the 2-yard line in that game, and he threw the ball 4 times. And shocker, by the way, one of those plays also resulted in a holding penalty because there weren't enough flags in that game as well. That's a good one, though.
And then Max is saying Doug Marrone. I think you package those guys together. I heard this wild story that they were like roommates here for a little while because neither of them wanted to like buy an actual house in Tuscaloosa. I don't know. That's kind of hearsay. You could also theoretically, I think there'd be a lot of people that would kind of label Pete Golding as a villain too, just because of the defensive component. I don't know.
He did less with more. I feel like again, the defense was better than people gave him credit for, but like. Brother, what are we doing dropping Will Anderson in coverage on 3rd down? Like, what are we talking about here? Like, that's insane.
All right. So this, okay. So real quick, on Jalen Milroe, now that he has Nick Sheridan, Kalen DeBoer, Tom G inside the comment box says he's going to take big steps forward. I'm a Jalen Milroe guy. I feel that, the talents around him, the running backs behind him, the offensive line, now that you bring back Caden Proctor, which is a weird deal. And maybe it's Welcome Formby who becomes, a city hero. It's funny. I think about him last night. I just saw him with the commercial for Taco Casa under the biggest cactus in town. And it's Welcome Formby's best 4, and it's like the 5 chalupa plate, the 10 tacos, and then he's like sits there and he's like, "Come to Taco Casa." So, anyways, the steps forward for Jalen Milroe. Why or why not?
And I don't want you to think I'm not paying attention because I am. I've really enjoyed this so far. I'm pulling up a graphic that I made. There is not a bigger. Yeah, Dan Enos is the worst, Max Tooney. That's a real good one. I hate Dan Enos. Here's the thing. Jalen Milroe, I am probably his loudest. I feel like I'm his loudest fan besides maybe his parents. I lost my mind after the Rose Bowl with the irrational hate. I don't know why everyone is so dead set on labeling this kid as like not being a good quarterback. If anything, because we heard about it nonstop. He's not that good, blah, blah, blah. And I think part of that's because people see him. He doesn't like, they don't want to see a good quarterback already, in my opinion. And then the national eyes that were on Alabama tuned in for that Texas game. And he made a couple bad throws in his 2nd or his 3rd career start in that game, right? Against a team that made the college football playoff, against a really, really good team. So they lost. And what did he do the rest of the year? Like, Jalen Milroe hasn't lost to an SEC team as a starter. People forget about that. I know Texas is coming in, but they were a Big 12 last year, right? Like, Jalen Milroe, I tell you what, when they were going to play a team that hadn't lost in 29 games, that was considered to be the new dynasty, and I'm going to get fired up about this and go on a little bit of a soapbox if you don't mind. But, like, when they pulled within 3 and the game was in, not in peril, but you had to put them away, they put the ball in Jalen Milroe's hands and Jalen Milroe's only, and we opened up new wrinkles in that offense, like from Tommy Rees hadn't shown all year. And I look at what he had around him last year, and you could say that he had all this talent, blah, blah, blah. I remember hearing from Tyler Booker at Media Days last year, it's going to be, and J.C. Latham, it's going to be joyless murder ball. We're going to get back to this and blah, blah. And that offensive line gave up 49 sacks last year, which is the most in Alabama program history. It's the most of any SEC team in the last 15 years. It was ranked 129th out of 133 teams. Keep in mind, they gave up 41 2 years ago with Bryce Young. So it's not like it's all on Jalen. To put that in perspective, that 49 last year was more than Oregon, Washington, Georgia, and Michigan had combined. And it was 11 more than Georgia had allowed in the last 3 years combined. Jalen Milroe was sacked one less time. I tell you what, Jalen Miller was sacked 48 times himself. That's the same amount of sacks that A.J. McCarron had in 40 career starts. Jalen Miller did it in one season. It like the hate that this kid has gotten is so stupid to me. And he's a good passer. You look at his numbers, like the yards per attempt, the like his numbers last year from like a QBR, I believe, and passer efficiency rating were higher than Penix. And like he's averaging, like I think it was a 10.2 yards per attempt. All the numbers are there. I think that I think he's gonna have a breakout year, especially in this offense. I'm really excited that DeBoer's already kind of like named him to be like the guy. I love that kid, man. I think he's such a good ambassador for the school, and it's rare that like Bama has had a quarterback that has received that much hate, and all he's done is just put his head down and worked and won.
The thing I didn't like, if there was one critique that I didn't really like about Coach Saban, was last year the whole cake bake-off. Because we knew it was going to be Milroe, but like, if the cake was going to be baked and like about the quarterbacks, right? It was like, it was because I felt like that kind of created division within the team. But maybe it was by design to get to kind of showcase that, he's the starter and we can go as far with him as we can go. I don't know. This back end of Alabama's schedule. Okay. Yesterday with Nick Kelly of Tuscaloosa News, we talked about the front end. But when you look to the back end, man, it is ultra challenging. Games on the road against Baton Rouge. Games against Josh Heupel in Tennessee. You play Missouri and Eli Drinkwitz, the top coach that nobody talks about, right? Yeah. I remember like On3 came out with their list of top 25 coaches, and he's like number 25. And it was, I was like, damn, he's a pretty good coach. You also take on Brett Venables. People forget about Oklahoma, right? Going to Norman. And then you take on Hugh Freeze here at Bryant-Denny Stadium. Your thoughts on that back end?
So that's the one thing that I think is going to potentially stand in the way for Bama to be as good as they can be this year. This schedule is brutal. The schedule is brutal for a second year in a row, man. And it's like, or like honestly, a third year in a row. And it's frustrating because it's like, it feels like Texas got a bit of a cakewalk. It feels like Ole Miss and Mizzou got a little bit of a cakewalk. I heard the guy that was talking before I came on here who was like, if Ole Miss gets up on us, they're gonna run the score. But Ole Miss doesn't play us this year.
Yep.
Like, we don't even get to play Ole Miss this year. I love Nick Kelly. I envy that he got to talk about the front half, because that front half, even though it's still challenging, is not as difficult as the back half. People aren't going to want to hear this. I think that Tennessee game's a loss. I think that Tennessee game's a loss in Knoxville. I just think I'm really high on them this year. I don't want to be, obviously, but I think they're going to be really good. Now, the Mizzou game, you get Mizzou at home, and it'll be interesting to see with Mizzou and a couple of other teams on that schedule, because where Bama, I think, is potentially going to struggle is the secondary. You just lost so many bodies in the secondary. And you've got some guys, and you might have some star power in like the starting rotation, but the depth and stuff like that, like I wonder how good they're going to be able to be, and also from a continuity standpoint back there. But so that's what would worry me with Mizzou. I think that line came out and Bama's like an 8.5-point favorite.
Yeah.
LSU is worrisome because you got to go to Baton Rouge. Here's a fun stat that I love to say, and all of the listeners can use this moving forward if you ever run into an LSU fan. LSU has beaten Alabama 6 times in Death Valley since 1957. 6 times. That's the hardest place to play in the country, right? Like they've beaten them 6 times since the Eisenhower administration. Yep. So I think that Bama could be good there. Again, you get Auburn at home. But I think the key to this whole thing, man, is like you gotta get to 10 wins to have a chance to get to the playoff, right? Like you just have to, especially with how stacked the SEC is going to be. I think you lose to Georgia, and I think you probably lose to Tennessee. You cannot afford to fall anywhere else, really. In Wisconsin, what do you call it? Mizzou, LSU, Oklahoma. That Oklahoma game is going to be real interesting too, because it's like, usually that's like cupcake week or whatever, and so I think that'll be interesting to see where they'll be. But I love the fact that like we're in like doubting season, because every time that's happened in recent memory, it's gone really well for Bama.
Yeah, I just looked to the back end schedule and I'm like, man, my goodness. And you know what? There's a tougher schedule out there in the SEC on the back end, which is Florida.
Oh my God!
Like
They scored his entire schedule.
Yeah, I know. Like people were singing and dancing about landing Cormani McLean yesterday, and they got Jameer Grimsley, during the transfer portal fallout. But other than that, man, Billy Napier. I don't know him from Adam. I know that he's also under the Coach Saban ecosystem, but it's going to be really tough for him to retain his job with that schedule. And kind of, I think he's already kind of going under, and there's kind of water leaking in the boat. I wanted to ask you about two other coaches within Alabama's ecosystem, and that's Lane Kiffin and Steve Sarkisian. Two of the top coaches in college football, great offensive minds. As you mentioned, Ole Miss doesn't play Alabama this season yet. I mean, we don't know what's going to happen in the SEC championship game. Steve Sarkisian doesn't either. Again, we don't know who's going to be 1 and 2 in the SEC title game. But when you're coming in, these two coaches, I don't even know if they're at their prime, where they're at, but we know that they're loaded. They have returning quarterbacks. Jackson Dart, people forget about him. He was a problem. He will be more of a problem this year. Quinn Ewers, he's a problem. Whoever's going to be, he's going to be the guy. They don't have the weapons, in my opinion, that they had last year, but they'll make it work, right? Who has the better season, and who's kind of more of a threat overall in the SEC? Texas, Ole Miss. If you're kind of buying or selling right now, who are we taking from Lane or Sark? Kind of what's your overall thoughts about those two?
Man, that's tough because they both got gifted a good schedule, which is shocking to me. But they both got gifted a very, very manageable schedule. Between the two, I gotta go with Kiffin, and here's why. I love those two to death. I think that they are the best two offensive minds in all of football at any level. I just do. I've thought that for a long time. They just do such a good job of being so creative with scheming guys open. There's no reason that Devontae Smith had 1,800 yards and 23 touchdowns in one season, especially with Waddle being out for half the year. And he just continued to find ways to scheme him open. Here's the thing with Kiffin. My concern is I don't know what happens to him every time he played Saban, but something would take over and it would go poorly for him. Just his own coaching mistakes, all that kind of stuff. They would shoot themselves in the foot a lot. But with Kiffin, what I haven't seen from him is stacking seasons. Like they had 10 wins in 2021. They went to a Sugar Bowl, all that kind of stuff. They had 11 last year. Sandwich in between there is kind of a down year. Can you do the things that to be consistent year in, year out in the conference? I would be more bullish on them, I think, strictly because man, they've gone all in. I keep saying this. They're like a Major League Baseball team after the right before the trade deadline. After the All-Star break, it's them in Miami are loading up for a run this year. And with Texas, I'm with you, man. They have a lot of talent. I think Isaiah Bond's great. I will forever thank him for 4th and 31. Isaiah Bond's not A.D. Mitchell. They lost their top 3 receivers, Jordan Whittington, A.D. Mitchell, Xavier Worthy, and Jatavian Sanders. And keep in mind, dude, one of the things that was made Texas so good last year was that they had 2 guys in the middle of that defensive line that were both NFL draft picks. One won the Lombardi, and they lost them and their defensive line coach. Why can't I think of his name now? He's at LSU, Bo Davis. And here's the thing with Texas, do you remember just backtrack for a second here, Mikhail. Remember a year ago before the season when people would talk about Texas, and it was the same narrative that it had been for 9 years prior to that, which was like Texas is never going to be back. Texas sucks. We do this every single year. We talk about how they're going to be great, and they do the least with the most, and blah blah blah. Yeah. That was the narrative about Texas for a decade, and then they have one elite season, and then all of a sudden it's like, dude, Texas is for real. They're going to be around forever. And I just am not sold on that because this is the first year they're going to have to. They don't get Kansas, and that was always a challenge for them, to be honest. Yeah, they don't get to play those games in the SEC.
Wanted to as we round out, we have Ty Hayes from Around the Table Sports joining us at 9:30. But kind of your observations, assessments from Alabama's spring football game. Just kind of an overview. What'd you see? Kind of themes that kind of things that made your ears perk out. Would you kind of rewind? Want to get your take on that.
Yeah, honestly, I think the one thing was I'm getting old, and so I'm having to write down names more, especially with the portal. You know what I mean? It's like sure. It's so many different names. I will say I think that what has me most excited for everything, or more than anything, is Justice Haynes For one, I'm real excited. I don't know why we didn't run him more in the Rose Bowl or at all last season, but that's, and I still love the fact they got Jam Miller. Like, I think the running backs can be really good, and I think that they're going to be in a situation where they're going to be utilized in such a different way than we've seen before because of, like, the pass heavy attack. But dude, the receivers, keep sleeping on them, man. Kendrick Law, Kobe Prentice, like I think those kids are going to be good. Like, I mean, we're not talking about this kid at all, but was it 14? Justin Hale, what's his first name? Jalen Hale. That kid could be a star. Like, I think, and that's saying all that before Ryan Williams even comes in the building. And I think they have a chance to be really, really good. And that's one of the things that, like, you had guys piece together last year at times, like Jermaine Burton at A&M was a good example. Isaiah Bond was huge on third down against Georgia, especially in that in the SEC championship game. But, like, you didn't have a guy that would just take over something. And I don't know if they'll have that this year. But I do know that Washington had three receivers drafted in the draft about a month ago, and I love that because I think that room is super talented and people are really, really sleeping on them.
Tell us about the Fourth and Wrong podcast. What you got going over there, and you have a YouTube channel, and then tell us about you're also on the radio 104.5 ESPN in Baton Rouge. So kind of give us a little bit of detail so our fans right here of the Undefeated could also find your content. Yeah,
man, I appreciate you having me on again. It's been a lot of fun. Sorry I got on that soapbox about Jalen Milroe. I will die on that hill. But yeah, it's the Fourth and Wrong podcast. Me and my co-host Tyler Huck. We have a lot of fun with it. We actually we record together every Monday.
Okay.
For about an hour and a half, going over all things college football and fun stuff. I always say if you love college football and you hate the bleep button, you will love the show. It's a lot of fun. And then we also have a daily show where we come out Monday through Thursday at 8 p.m. We have, I think Drew Butler on last night and JD Pickell earlier in the week and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's a daily show, about 20 to 30 minutes every night at 8 p.m. on the YouTube channel. So y'all check it out.
That's a Fourth and Wrong podcast, and then you're on air 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.
So I'm not on air yet, which is probably for the best because of the fandom and all that kind of stuff. But I'm working behind the scenes more with stuff, and which has been cool because I've been able to do more running like the social media and the video and video editing and production. And, while still getting to do my own projects and stuff like that on the side. But yeah, this fall especially, that'll most likely change.
Randall wants me to tell you that Jalen Hale probably out for the season.
No! He got injured I forgot about that.
Yeah, so it's Undefeated. You can't slide anything past them. They got you.
I appreciate that, Randall. I said his name wrong, and I forgot about his injuries.
So double. But you know what? I loved having you on the show. Really great job. This was fun. I wanted to, kind of to bring you on and just kind of pick your brain about a couple of college football topics. And, if you're up for it, I'd like to bring you back again sometime. So, and if you guys want me on the Fourth and Wrong podcast, man, I'm all for it, man. So hit me up and we could talk roundtable or whatever. But I appreciate you. Everybody, please give it up for Chris Marler. We appreciate him joining Fourth and Wrong podcast. Go subscribe to the YouTube channel. Check it out. Give him support and definitely follow. What's your? Tell us about your social media. Social media handle.
Vern Funquist CFB. It's my third one in like a year because Elon has like.
Did you get banned?
I got banned twice. So the first one was my fault. I don't know how PG this show is, but I made a joke on April Fools. It was strictly a joke and it was a bad idea. But I made a joke about a Kirby Smart sex tape, and it was up for like maybe an hour, and YouTube or Twitter was like, no, you're done. And the other one was like a couple of months ago. I finally built that one all the way back up. I had the first one for like 15 years. Built the other one back up, and a buddy of mine who I've been trying to get in touch with for several days was like a little bit worried. He just casually comments in like on a Twitter or on a tweet or whatever, and I was like, dude, I'm gonna kill you for not calling me back. And they shut it down immediately, and I was like, awesome, okay, just a terroristic threat. I was like, that's okay, that's just Evan.
Okay, like, so 2 strikes. You're living on a prayer. So 3 strikes and you're out. So we gotta follow it's Vern Funquist CFB on X. And North Alabama just lost his breakfast. So, all right. So we appreciate you, man. Thanks for joining us, and we'll catch up with you soon, man.
All right. Thanks, brother.
All right.